lifestyle blog Awesome, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a FIMO Leather-Effect Clay bucket bag, as you can see here. So to get started, I want to talk a little bit about the Leather-Effect Clay. So as you can see, it's not the same as kind of the other FIMO clays. When you pull it, you see all of this like leather detail. And after it gets baked, it's super flexible. So this is how we're going to be making the leather bucket bag. We're able to move it around and really play with it. So we're going to actually be sewing this material today as well. Super easy to sew through. You can use a sewing machine. So let's get started. So the first thing that I did when I made the bucket bag, you want to make sure that your clay is pretty thin. So this was we used the roller and did it to a 5. So I'm going to just show you when we put it through the roller. I found that it's easier when you're using the roller to have another person maybe to help you catch it on the other side, especially when you're rolling it pretty thin. So we went to a 5. We kind of found that we couldn't get it to less than or more than a 5 without it kind of ripping and tearing. So I think when you're making a bag like this, like 5 is kind of the sweet spot. Once you get to a 6, I think it's a little bit too thin to be able to use. So we rolled it out like so. I'm not going to go all the way to a 5 for the purpose of time in this video, but here is it at a 2. So rolled it out. You can also use a roller. So we actually, after we rolled this piece out, I used a roller on it to get it a little bit thinner. You can go a little bit thinner without it ripping, but you don't want to go too much thinner than this, I'd say. So to start out, we're going to just cut this into a rectangle. So these were the 2 biggest pieces that I was able to get with the roller. And this is when you get it basically like to almost the edge of the roller. So you can see almost the whole roller is being used here. So we want to cut out as big of a rectangle as possible with our pieces of leather.
And Sam, would you be able to confirm for us how much clay that was that you rolled that sheet with?
Yeah, so each one of these, we used the 2 pieces. So we used 1 pack for each one of these pieces. So 2 packs total to make the bag. So when I do this, I'm going to try to get as big of a piece that I can and that's still rectangular, and you want to cut both of your pieces to the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 1 piece and then use my other piece as a template. And I found that with the clay being so thin, you want to really make sure that you get rid of some of these like more jaggedy edges, if you can see, because they can rip. So if I were to take this right now and tear it because it is so thin, the more jagged pieces will rip. But if you have a really clean cut like this, you don't get any ripping. All right, so you got 1 piece cut, and then we're just going to use this as a template for the second piece. We need to cut it a little bit smaller. And it's super easy on the leather once it's baked to just use scissors. So it doesn't even have to be super sharp scissors, just like normal craft scissors work. I also tried using like a utility knife, and a utility knife is great on this material as well. So you can use either one and get a really clean edge. All right. So I'm just going to cut it a little bit smaller because you can see my second piece. I've got a little chunk missing there. Right, so once you have both of your pieces cut, the way that we form this into kind of like a bag shape is by cutting some pieces down here. So we're going to cut 2 triangles down here, and then we're going to be able to fold it into kind of like a bag shape. So as you can imagine, like this will be the bottom, and then we'll make sides out of that. So for this one,
Quick question. What if
yeah.
there's leather, what if while you're rolling the leather effect, you have a little bit of bubbles?
I just take the roller and roll that out afterward. So we do get some bubbles sometimes, especially when you're rolling it that thin. It's easier to get kind of like bubbles or little like wrinkles along the edge. So we just take the roller afterward and roll those out. And you can also, like, once it's rolled out, you can also pull it and stretch it a little bit, and that helps get rid of some of the bubbles or wrinkles in the clay.
Thank you so much.
So what you want to do next is cut. I typically guess this. It's not really like, as long as on both pieces of your leather, it's exactly the same. So we're just going to use this one as a template for the next one. So it doesn't matter really like the distance from the edge or the distance in the middle. We're just going to cut 2 triangles. So just like that. And then another triangle on the other side. Relatively like the same shape, but going the opposite way. So just like that. I'm gonna make this one a little bit longer. And then we're going to take this piece and use this piece as a template onto the other one to cut out the triangles in the same place. These will be where we fold the bag to make the bottom and the sides. Okay, now with the triangles cut, so now as you can see, these are here. What is going to happen then is we're going to turn these pieces. Let's see if I can get this closer. So just like that, in onto itself. And then we're going to sew along the outer edge right here. And then this is going to form the bottom of the bag. And then this piece here is going to be the side. So we're going to do this with all 4 triangles. until we have a shape like this, and we have 2 of these shapes.
And would you be able to let us know the approximate size that we should be cutting our rectangles to?
The rectangles for the bag can really be any size. I think that our first one is actually slightly smaller. We weren't able to get the clay rolled as big. So basically, like however big you can get the clay. So what we kind of have ours as is a little bit smaller than the roller machine, so that we can get those really clean edges. But it doesn't matter really what size you make it. You could make it a square, a rectangle. It would just change the shape of your bag at the end. So it's just really the preference that you have. So for the triangles down here, to sew these, I'm just using a matching thread and a hand sewing needle. And it's super easy. I'll try to do this up here just so you can see a little bit of how easy it is to sew. It's a little bit, you have to put, if you're hand sewing, it's a little bit more forceful than like a piece of fabric, but it's definitely easier to sew through than like normal leather would be. Right. And I'm not going to sew too close together, just for the sake of you guys not having to watch me sew the whole thing for so long. So, but you want to probably put your stitches pretty close together just so you don't have very much space in between. So for this one, you can see on the side there, my stitches are all pretty close together. For this bag, I'm going to put them a little bit further apart, but just make sure yours are all closer together so that the integrity holds up a little bit better. All right, so as you can see, the needle's going through pretty easily. I don't have to push it too hard. And it's not hard on my fingers. The only thing I'd say when you're sewing it is to keep the hole when you're sewing it. So like don't put it super close to the edge because it could potentially tear through the edge here, like if it has too much weight. So keep it a little bit further away from the edge.
And do you use a standard needle and thread?
Yep, just a standard needle and thread. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could use more of a heavy duty needle, but it doesn't really need it. Works really well with just a standard needle and thread. All right. Work on. And then the way that I knot the thread once I've sewn it into the bag is I just take the needle and go back through one of the stitches and do the knot that way. I know like for fabric, you can put it back through the fabric and do the knot that way. For the leather, it doesn't work really as easily like that. So I think the easiest way that I found is to just kind of put the needle back through the stitch and then make a knot that way on the inside. So we're going to do the same on the other side. So see then the bottom here, this will be the bottom. And then we're going to do, once we put the two pieces together, we're basically going to do the same thing with the needle and thread. So like I said, I'm doing the stitches a little bit bigger than I would normally do them. So just for the sake of time. So we'll do the second one over here. We want to do the same thing, folding this in. Like so. And you could really do this. You could make patterns on the bag and run that through the roller. You could do like a two-tone one with one side being a different color. So you could really do a lot of different possibilities for this. I was playing around with patterns, and it's this clay is very great to do marbling effects with. So if you put two pieces together, it's really easy to get a great marble effect by rolling that through the roller a couple of times. One more side, and then we'll put the bag together. So as you can see, this is just like a normal polyester yarn or thread that we're using here. If you wanted something more heavy duty, you could go with that, but same thing with the needle. Like it doesn't really make too much of a difference. It's so easy to sew into this. All right. Okay, so one more side. All right. So now we're going to attach the two pieces together, forming the bag. So what I found easiest when doing this, just to hold the sides together while you sew. I'm only going to sew one of these sides just so we have enough time to finish it off. So I'll just show you the one side. So I found that it's easy to put, like if you have a binder clip or a bobby pin, hold it together using that, and then it makes it a lot easier to be able to get your needle and thread down the side really evenly. So I'm going to hold this side together with a bobby pin as well. And then pretty much you're just going to do exactly the same thing as you did for those other pieces all the way down the side. So I'll sew this one side here and then show you how to finish it off. You're going to sew the side, the other side, and then the bottom in the same exact way. You could also run, now that you have these pieces together like this, you could also run this through a sewing machine. I just find it easier for the bottom to hand sew.
And Sam, will you be sewing right through the bottom of the bag to make sure that hole is no longer there?
Yep, so what I'll be doing is pushing these two pieces together and then sewing right on top of them. Once you got the sides sewn, it's a little bit easier to sew these pieces together like this. And then there won't be a hole. So I think this part is a lot easier to do with hand sewing. This would be a little bit difficult on the machine. So definitely with hand sewing, you can get rid of this hole pretty easily. All right. So, sewn up one side. I'll just do a little bit of sewing on the bottom just to show you guys where you can like pinch in and close up that hole. All right, so you're basically just going to take these pieces and line them up as best as you can. It's a little bit more difficult on the bottom because you don't have that bobby pin as aid to help you hold the pieces together. Just do your best at holding it together on the inside with your hand. All right, so there's a little bit of the bottom here. And if you keep going along here, you'll be able to close up these holes. And then I'll show you how to finish it off. So obviously on your own bag, you want to do exactly the same thing that I just did on the other side and sew up this side. But I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to finish it up. So you want to take your leather punch, and I have it set to a size that's slightly bigger than the string that I'm going to use. Just makes it easier to get the string all the way around and actually gives it like space for the string to be able to pull. So we want to leave, so like this one here, we want to do 2 holes right to the left and right of the middle. So if we find where the middle is, right about there. So we want to start our first hole right about there. All right. And then just continue this all the way around, spacing out the holes. And this is how we're going to put our drawstring through for our bag to pull it tight.
And when you're stitching, how tight should the stitches be?
So I'd say I did mine a little bit further apart just for time. But I did for this one, I put the stitches pretty tight together, and this should be sufficient. So on the inside, there's another stitch that's covering this part. So there's no holes along this. Right, and last one. And then sometimes when you're using the leather punch, the pieces get stuck in there, but they're actually punched all the way through, so you just want to go pop them out.
And if I don't have a leather punch at home, is there anything else that you would recommend I can test or try?
You could use a hole punch. I think that should work. We have the clay thin enough that I think a hole punch should work fine. If you have that, or if you have any of those like little clay punchers, those should work as well. All right, so our final part here, you want to kind of squish the top of your bag together a little bit, give it some stretch. And then, so we're going to put this through all the way around, going in and out of the holes like so. When you get to the end, on my first one, I put some beads on there. So you could put some beads, you could put like a little tassel. I know that FIMO has like a great little tassel kit. So you can make a little leather effect tassel and put that through there.
And what kind of string is that you're using, Sam?
I'm just using like a cording, but you could use like a twine or like a cotton rope, anything that is going to be sturdy enough that when you pull this, it's not going to rip. So see, when we go ahead and pull this together now, we want to get this tight so we've got that nice like bucket bag top to it. And then tie this off. Right. So on the other one I made, like I said, I put some beads on there. So just strung some beads along the cord and tied a little knot on the bottom so that they don't come off. So we're going to cut the string to a good length where once you untie it to use the bag, it's not going to come undone. And then our last bit here is to take some more cording And we're gonna punch another hole in the side. So we didn't sew this side, so I'm gonna punch it a little bit off center to the side. And then I'm gonna punch this side as well. And then take some more of our cording. You could use like a chain for this with a jump ring. Any kind of strap would work for this. I'm just gonna put this end through the hole. Tie this off. So I chose to use this cording just because the knots stay pretty tight. So any kind of give or weight are not gonna unravel the knots and untie them. So just pull that tight and then determine the length of the strap. So for the first one, I just kind of like put it up on the side of me and measured like on my on my shoulder, like how far down I'd want that to go. And then you would cut another piece. You'd cut that piece and then thread it through the other side. Now this side. And then trim off any ends. So like I said, with the cording, the knot's gonna stay pretty tight, so you can trim off the ends really close to your knot. And then you got yourself your little bucket bag. And then feel free to add any kind of embellishments, like a tassel, like I said, or some beads. And there you go. There's what the end result is. Are there any other questions? I think I saw a question about how do you open the bag. So you could also do, I would just say like you untie the knot. The knot is, if you don't tie the knot super tight, you can undo it easily, but you could also take and put a knot right here. Like if you're punching out your, when you punch out your leather, if your hole is not too big, so see my hole's only a little bit bigger than the actual string. So if I were to tie a knot here, the string is not going to go through and then you're able to pull this. Or I think somebody else also answered it and said like the beads would help as well. And you could definitely use the beads as like a little stopper too. Thank you all so much for coming to the class. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this bucket bag and learning how to sew the FIMO Leather-Effect Clay. If you want to see any more of what we do, you can head over to @aw.sam on Instagram or our blog awsam.com. Thanks so much for coming.